who has the bedrooms facing the street. I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All the windows and doors in 657 allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I'm the watcher, and I've been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession, and now you are too. Braddis family, welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy move-in day. You know I will be watching. Derek and Maria stopped bringing their kids to the house. They were no longer sure or if they would be able to move in. They're like, what the fuck? Maybe not. How do we ditch this house? Several weeks later, a third letter arrived. Where have you gone to? The watcher wrote. 657 Boulevard is missing you. Many Westfield residents compare the town to Mayberry. It's like this idyllic setting. It's just like, they claim it's just like the Andy Griffith Show, right? So I grew up watching reruns of that crap, right? It's not crap, pretty good stuff. You gotta love the stories and the great messaging of the Andy Griffith Show, right? Maybe it just doesn't fit the really fucking scary stories kind of vibe. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to look at some Andy Griffith hauntings. Let's see what's going on there. But it's supposed to be this beautiful, idyllic, utopian town, the kind of place where a new neighbor might greet you with a welcoming note. Maybe not like this creepy shit, like cookies. Like, hey neighbor, made you some cookies. Westfield is about 45 minutes from New York and a bit too slow for singles, meaning that the town's 30,000 residents are largely well-to-do families. This year alone, so this current year, Boomerang ranked Westfield as the 99th richest city in America, but only the 18th wealthiest in New Jersey. And in 2014, the Watcher struck. The website Neighborhood Scout named it the country's 30th safest town. So pretty crazy, right? Just pretty crazy. So at the time that the Watcher struck, it was the 30th safest town. The most pressing local issues of late, according to the residents, have been the temporary closure of Trader Joe's after it had a roof collapse and a rampant scourge of unconstitutional policing, by which they mean aggressive parking enforcement. So it sounds like not too shabby of a place to live. But one activity that all locals kind of sort of noted that they recognized as treacherous, of all things, is trying to buy a house. Apparently, there's a lot of money and there's a lot of ego. People have claimed to see bidding wars where friends have lost by over $300K, right? So just going back and forth, trying to outbid each other on a house. And this family's house was on a boulevard, a wide tree-lined street with some of the most desirable homes in town. As the Watcher noted, the boulevard used to be the street to live on. You made it if you lived on the boulevard. Built in 1905, so nice old creepy house, 657 Boulevard was perhaps the grandest home on the block, and the Woodses had put it on the market. They had received multiple offers above their asking price, but that led the Broadduses to initially suspect that the Watcher might be somewhat upset over losing the house, so maybe they outbid them. But the Woodses said no one ultimately interested in the house could really fit that description because one had already backed out, and for like medical reasons, for other reasons, just like not going to be buying a house right now. It's just bad diagnosis, and was like, peace out. And another one had already found another home, and in an email to the Broadduses, Andrea Woods proposed another theory. Would the mention of contractor trucks and your children suggest that it was someone in the neighborhood? The letter did indicate proximity. They had been processed in Kearney, the U.S. Postal Service's distribution center in northern New Jersey. The first was postmarked June 4th before the sale was public. The Woodses had never put up a for sale sign, and only a day after the contractors arrived. So the renovations were mostly interior, and people who lived nearby say they did notice unusual commotion, even jackhammering in the basement. When Derek and Maria walked Detective Lugo around the house, they showed him that the easel on the porch was hidden from the street by vegetation, making it difficult to see unless someone was behind the house or right next door. A few days after the first letter, Maria and Derek went to a barbecue across the street, welcoming them and another new homeowner on the block. The Broadduses hadn't told anyone about the Watcher, as the police had instructed, and found themselves scanning the party for clues while keeping tabs on their kids, who ran just having a blast around the crowd that made up most of the suspect pool. We kept screaming at them to stay close, Maria said. People must have thought that we were freaking crazy. At one point, Derek was chatting with John Schmidt, who lived 2 doors down, when Schmidt told him about the Langfords, who lived between them. Peggy Langford was in her 90s, and several of her adult children, all in their 60s, lived with her. So kind of weird. But the family was a bit odd, apparently, Schmidt said, but claimed that they were harmless. He described one of the younger Langfords, Michael, who didn't work and had a beard like Ernest Hemingway, kind of a Boo Radley character. Derek thought the case was solved. The Langfords' house was right next door to the easel on the porch. Could have easily seen it. The family had lived there since the 1960s, when the Watcher's father said the letters had begun observing 657 Boulevard. Richard Langford, the family's patriarch, had died 12 years earlier, and the current Watcher claimed to have been on the job for the better part of 2 decades. So all that stuff's kind of lining up. When the Broadduses told Lugo about the family, he said he already knew. And a week after the first letter arrived, he brought Michael Langford to police headquarters for an interview. Michael denied knowing anything about the letters, but the Broadduses told them that the narrative of what he said matched things mentioned in the letter. This isn't CSI Westfield, Lugo told the family. When the wife is dead, it's the husband. But there wasn't much hard evidence. And after a few weeks, the police chief told the Broadduses that short of an admission, there wasn't much the department could do. Quote, "This is someone who threatened my kids." And the police are saying, probably nothing's going to happen, Derek said. Yeah, I'm with him on this one. Probably isn't good enough for me. Yeah, you're fucking right. Probably isn't good enough for me. After the second letter, Derek told the cops that if they didn't take care of the situation, they would have a different kind of case on their hands. "This person attacked my family, and where I'm from, if you do that, you get your ass beat." Boom. Derek fucking nailed it. Frustrated, the Broadduses began their own investigation. Derek became especially obsessed. He set up webcams in 657 Boulevard and spent nights crouched in the dark, watching to see if anyone was watching the house at close range. At this point, Maria just thought, he's like, oh, he's fucking crazy. He's like lost it over this stuff. He had like maps, he had like files, and evidence and all kinds of stuff. And look, I'm with him. I'm not going to say I'm not with him on this one. He had a map of all the neighbors which had moved in. The Langfords were the only ones there since the 60s. So he dug into everything. He had overlays on the maps for possible sight lines, for the easel, and a circle for approximate range of earshot to estimate who might have heard Maria yelling their kids' names. And only a few homes really fit that criteria. The Broadduses also turned to several experts. They employed a private investigator who staked out the neighborhood and ran background checks on the Langfords, but didn't find anything really noteworthy. Derek reached out to a former FBI agent who had served as the inspiration for The Silence of the Lambs. So he reached out to this person. They were on a high school board of trustees together, and he's like, oh, I've got a friend in the business. I've got somebody that might be able to hook me up. I know you from this board. Let's take a look at this. So they also hired Robert Linehan, another former FBI agent, to conduct a threat assessment. Linehan recognized several old-fashioned ticks in the letters that pointed to an older writer. So we're looking at something that probably sounds like they're a little bit older at this point. The envelope was addressed to M.M. Broaddus. The salutations included the day's weather: warm and humid, sunny and cool for a summer day, stuff like that. And the sentences had double spaces between them. The letter had a certain literary kind of touch to it, which suggested a voracious reader. So someone that was a nerd, let's just call him a nerd in a good way, and a surprising lack of profanity given the level of anger, which Linehan thought meant a less macho writer. So maybe he wondered the Watcher had seen The Watcher, starring Keanu Reeves, as a serial killer who stalks the detective trying to catch him. And that's when I first heard the story. I'm like, oh, you mean this is about Keanu? This is about Keanu? So they started to get this theory that maybe they seen this. But Linehan didn't think the Watcher was likely to act on the threats, but the letters had enough typos and errors to imply a certain level of erraticism. Like the first letter was dated Tuesday, June 4th, but the day was a Wednesday. There was also this feeling of just like seething anger that just dripped from the letters, directed at the wealthy in particular. So maybe someone that's in, maybe a financial bind and angry that others are not. Who knows? The Watcher was upset by all of the new money that was moving into the town. And a quote from that, "Are you one of those Hoboken transplants trying to ruin Westfield?" And, the Broaddus's renovations were relatively modest. Like, they're not like putting in a fucking golden slide and golden shitters. Like, I mean, they're just like, okay, this house is old. Let's fix it up to where it's like nice and safe for us and the kids. From the letter, one of the letters, the house is crying from all the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what used to be in a time when I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard when I ran from room to room, imagining the life the rich occupants there had. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old, and so did my father. But he kept watching until the day he died, and now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again. Linehan recommended looking into former housekeepers, their descendants. Perhaps the Watcher was jealous that the Broadduses had bought a home that the writer could not afford, but the focus remained on the Langfords in cooperation with the local police. The Broadduses sent a letter to Langfords announcing plans to tear down the house, hoping to prompt a response. So they're like, let's set a trap. And guess what? Nothing happened. Detective Lugo brought Michael Langford in for a second interview, but got nowhere, and his sister Abby accused the police of harassing their family. Eventually, the Broadduses hired Lee Levitt, a lawyer who met with several members of the Langford family as well as their attorney to show them the letters, along with photos explaining how their home was the one with few vantage points from which the easel could be seen. The meeting grew tense. The Langfords rallied behind Michael, insisting on his innocence. One night, Derek had a dream in which he confronted Peggy, the oldest Langford, and demanded she build an 8-foot fence between the properties. Maria was having other kinds of dreams. One night she woke up to an especially vivid one where a man who lived nearby, from her quote, he was wearing these boots and carrying a pitchfork and calling to the kids, and I couldn't get to them in time, Maria said. Could you just imagine this fucking nightmare that they're going through? She thought almost anyone could be the Watcher, which made daily life feel like just navigating a minefield, right? Of just like, who the fuck are you? Are you this person? Are you that person? I'm just going to Trader Joe's. They just built it with a new roof after it collapsed. I'm here to fucking, hang out. And oh God, all these fucking people could be the person that's threatening me and my family. She probed the faces of shoppers at Trader Joe's. That's something specifically that she did. Like, she was just like looking for people to see if they were looking at her strangely, looking at the way that they looked at the kids. And she spent Googling hours Googling and, criddling on people to see if they could be them. There were reasons to consider other suspects. For one thing, the police spoke to Michael before the second letter was sent, which would make sending two more especially reckless. Then there was the rest of the neighborhood to consider. The private investigator found 2 child sex offenders within a few blocks. Bill Woodward, the Broaddus' house painter, had also noticed something strange. The couple behind 657 Boulevard kept a pair of lawn chairs strangely close to the Broaddus' property. He said, one day I was looking out of the window and I saw this older guy sitting on one of the chairs. He wasn't facing his house. He was facing 657. He was facing the Broadduses. And, if that's just Bob, then that's cool. But if you don't know this person and they could be the fucking Watcher and they're just like chilling right at the edge of your property, staring at your house, fucking weird. But by the end of 2014, the investigation had stalled. The Watcher had left no digital trail, no fingerprints, no way to place someone at the scene of the crime. There's just no way that they could really figure anything out. So the letters could be read closely for possible clues or dismissed as just nonsensical ramblings of a possible sociopath. So they just really kind of hit this thing where they're just like, okay, the trail has grown cold, the case has grown cold. In December of 2014, the Westfield police told the Broadduses that they had run out of options, and Derek showed the letters to his priest, who agreed to bless the house. The renovations to 657 Boulevard, including a new alarm system, thank freaking baby Jesus, were finished within a few months, but the idea of moving in filled the Broadduses with overwhelming anxiety. Could they let their kids play outside or have friends over? Would they get a new letter every week? Derek priced out trained German shepherds. Great idea. I've got a Malinois, and so priced out some trained German shepherds, and posted a job on a website for military veterans. All you have to do is work out in the backyard every day. That's a pretty good gig. But the Broadduses hadn't really bought 657 to feel bunkered in a fortress. And they said, at the end of the day, it come down to, what are you willing to risk? Maria told me. We weren't going to put our kids in harm's way. Derek had been responding to occasional alarms at the house, sometimes in the middle of the night, bringing a knife with him just in case. So they were so joyous about their new home when they first move in, and within days, they were just absolutely petrified.